Hello, everybody. Dr. F Scott Feil here, and I wanted to give you a quick update on our main sponsor, Ice Shaker. If you're looking for a water bottle, a coffee cup, a protein shaker bottle, I have great news. Your search has ended. Ice Shaker has shaker bottles, tumblers, sports bottles, and the newest addition, and my personal favorite, the gallon and half-gallon jugs. These bad boys are both massive and sturdy and keep drinks cold for hours on end. This has been my answer to making sure I drink enough water throughout my day. I've still kind of come around to the protein game and I'm new at it still, but when my doctor advised me to increase my protein intake, I turned to powdered shakes. Every other shaker bottle on the market had its issues, but Ice Shaker is the only one I tried that was vacuum sealed, had no issues with clumps or smell, and it really kept my drinks the right temperature. I love this product and I love the company and the guys behind it as they are doing amazing things and simply winning. Not only in the world of shaker bottles and sports bottles and tumblers, but in the game of life. Their partnerships and charitable donations have not gone unnoticed by the Professors of Profit Pops crew. So if you want the best beverage consumption and protein shaker solution on the market, check out the link in our show notes to grab yours today. You can even customize them with laser engraving, just like I've got here for our pteducator.com, right? And, I promise you won't be disappointed with these stainless steel products. They're all colors, all sizes. You've got to check them out. Ice Shaker, let's shake things up. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Professors of Profit vlogcast. I'm your host, Dr. F Scott Feil, and I've got with me today longtime friend and somebody who I'm happy to reconnect with, Dr. Joses Ngugi. Joses, tell us a little bit about your journey, man, and what you're up to these days.
Man, appreciate you having me on here. It's an absolute pleasure. Wow, my journey. So I'm a physical therapist. I am also a business owner. We have two businesses. One of them helps students get into physical therapy school, and then the other one helps them build businesses while in school or even after graduating from school. And we have a few students now who have done multi-six figures every single year while in school, which is really cool. But really, for me, it's just time. Love being home. We have one child. We have another one on the way. So a lot of it as a physical therapist has been trying to figure out how to almost like backtrack what I felt I wasn't shown prior to getting into school, and realizing that, most of us kind of fall into this game of being in a lot of debt. Actually, it's crazy because a few weeks ago, I asked one of our students how much debt they were going to be in after graduating from school, and they said $230,000. I was like, whoa, right? And so to come out of school with that, and then obviously get paid what you're paid as a new grad PT, it takes the love out of what you actually would enjoy, which is being a physical therapist. And so really for us, it's just been taking something we love to do, which was mentoring students back when we were students, and turning it into something that's made us a lot of money, but also allowed us to help a lot of other students really open their eyes in their journey. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, man, I love it. So essentially, that debt to income ratio for the world of physical therapy is bad, and looking worse, right? It's getting worse. So again, I love the fact that you're helping people get into PT school, and we'll touch on that in a little bit because it is a great field. It's a great profession. Right. It seems like it's all doom and gloom on the internet and social media, but that is not the case if you leverage it appropriately. And that's what really got me, because I'm a little bit older than you guys. I went through PT school when it was a master's program. And then I got my transitional doctorate, and then I got my educational doctorate. And I ended up with about $140,000 worth of student loan debt. And not bad for, all the degrees and whatnot, and what I've done with it since. But I think the first question becomes, like, what was your why behind starting this side business and these side gigs that now have become kind of full-time gigs?
My why, it's interesting because someone asked me that recently, and I had to kind of trace back as to why. I actually didn't realize that this project, because what it started out as was really more of a pre-PT club mentorship program on our campus. A lot of it was just frustration. It wasn't initially to make money. That frustration came later, but it was initially because 5 of my classmates were told by their advisor, y'all can't become physical therapists because you had one rough year in college. And so, and this same advisor had never been a physical therapist. So the advisor was trying to help the best way they knew how, but really what they were doing was hurting the student's journey, and they were taking away a dream, and they didn't understand it because they themselves did not want to be a physical therapist, right? So at that point I was like, we got to figure something out. And so we actually started a student-led program to almost mentor each other, and it grew, and the students that were in it started getting into PT school. It wasn't meant to be a side hustle or a business or anything like that. But as we were doing it, during my second year of PT school, I hit a low point. And academically, I'd actually been pretty decent through college, through my first year of PT school. But during my second year in PT school, out of nowhere, I was bottom of my class grades wise. I actually, the way they would do it was, the way they would tell us what our grades were in PT school was, after an exam, they would have this piece of paper outside of the classroom where you took the test. It was crazy, right? And you had an alias, right? And so next to your alias, they would tell you, all right, you got an A, B, C, D, F, whatever, right? And so I would see my name at the bottom repeatedly, to the point where people started to figure out what my alias was. So I would actually change it every week or every other week out of embarrassment, right? And for me, it was like, I don't get it. Like, what's happening? I'm not terrible at studying. I've been pretty decent up until this point, but I started realizing that for the best way I can describe it is I almost felt like I was being like boxed in. And now looking back, I realized that a lot of it was, I was starting to realize that I was hitting this pinnacle of my educational journey of, one more year of PT school and becoming this physical therapist and being a doctor and making my family proud and all these different things. But it started to feel very different from how I thought it would feel. I thought it would feel like freedom. It started to feel like imprisonment. And a lot of that I didn't understand at the time was connected to realizing how deep of a hole I was going to be in financially, and realizing that maybe the way I wanted to live out my PT career was going to look different. And I just didn't know how to say that in words, but I just felt like I had made a mistake. I actually remember telling my girlfriend at the time, my now wife, I was like, I think I stole somebody's seat. I don't think I'm supposed to be in PT school, but we're already this far in. I can't change my mind. I'm already this far in the hole. And so that whole year that's how it felt. It felt heavy. There was times when professors would pull me aside saying, hey, like, what's going on? Because they had seen how I'd performed the year before, and it was just odd, right? And they try to help me, but I barely made it through my second year of school until my friend at that time, now business partner, Casey Coleman, I had seen him post some blogs on social media, and I was like, what are you doing? What are you posting blogs on? Like, because he was a year behind me in PT school. We went to the same program. I was like, are they teaching this? Like, they didn't show us this stuff when we were there last year. And he was like, no. I have a mentor that's teaching me how to like serve people online and build a side hustle. I was like, who? And so I remember 2 weeks later coming back to campus because I was doing my clinical rotations. It was the start of my third year when I had seen this interaction. Came back to campus. I was like, Casey, let's meet up. Show me what's going on. He introduced me to the man that became our first mentor, Greg Todd. And so he was like, this is what I'm learning. And I had never seen anything like it. And I just remember this shift from that moment where I was like, oh, there's another way. There's another way to serve people. There's another way to actually like help people with things that I actually have at my disposal now, like strengths that I have, gifts that I have. And he was the one that said, hey, this project, which he was a co-coach for that project we had on campus, he was like, we could just take this online and help other students with it. And that birthed what later became Pre-PT Grind, which was our first business, and the rest is history. So that's the story.
Yeah, I love that, man. And I have a lot of similarities there, right? Like for me, I got into my EDD program and I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like I already have a doctorate. I don't even want to teach. I'm getting more debt. Like what am I doing with my life? Like, this is ridiculous. And luckily, through the mentorship and coaching and guidance of some folks like Greg Todd, like Paul Goff, like Jerry Durham, Gallant Dill, just people outside of the world of business and physical therapy as well, they were able to kind of say the same basic thing and a lot of what you touched on, and it's just leverage. It's how you leverage the skills that you've already learned into your zone of genius, into your area of expertise, that thing that you love to do. And if you do that, they're like, oh, well, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Well, yeah, sort of. But at the same time, it's like, it's that thing that you love so much that when it gets hard, you're not going to quit. You're not going to give up on it, and just staying persistent and staying at it and staying consistent with the all the things. shows the level of dedication, the level of love, and really a lot of it is a labor of love, because it doesn't become like instant, money, raining everywhere. That's not how it works, So I think the next question kind of becomes like, all right, you guys started this out as like a side hustle and side gig. Tell us a little bit about the journey now from side hustle and side business to like now a full-time gig.
Wow. So it was a side hustle from late 2017 is when we actually went official and started as an official business. And I believe it was mid to late 2019 when it started to shift. And so what had happened was Casey was in school while we were building it, and I was a new grad PT now as it was becoming this online, side hustle, like officially. And we were just serving people Facebook, Instagram, and the audience began to grow until it actually became very difficult to do both. And so my initial transition was right after my wedding. So I was married in the summer of 2019. I remember prior to that feeling spread thin, actually, because we were getting so much traffic and eyeballs and clients from our side hustle, and I was also a full-time PT, right? And so I started to feel like I was getting drained. And I remember being on my honeymoon and being like, oh, this is what it feels like to recover, like to have energy. What? And so I remember making a decision while we were away on our honeymoon, and I was like, oh, I'm not going back to working full time, not because I don't like being a PT, but because like there's a demand already growing on this other side. It had gotten to that point. And so I remember having a conversation, actually messaged my boss while on my honeymoon, and I had gotten permission from my wife, and we actually worked it out so that when I came back, I haven't worked full time since prior to my wedding, like as a PT, right? And so I came back, I was only working 20 hours a week, and then it picked up to the point where by the end of 2019, I was like, yeah, at this point, I need to go all in with the business because of what it was doing for us financially. But more importantly, I didn't know the pandemic was going to hit. I had no idea, right? But this is about November, December of 2019, prior to the pandemic. And I remember us already starting to plan for our first child, right? And so I was like, okay, what do I need to do to make sure that by the time our child is born, everything is prepared and we obviously have the ability to spend time? Because for me, time was the biggest thing, and a lot of it's connected to my upbringing, and if we have time another time, I could go into that, but time with my family was always very important because of something I lacked when I was a kid because of work, right? And so I was like, I don't want that to be my children. And so that's when I said, cool, like we have time to actually like go all in and figure out how to make this thing our main gig. And by the early of 2020, our primary income was coming from our business. And so yeah, and then the pandemic hit, and it was like, whoa, like I guess we were kind of ready, which created a scare because I was like, oh, like it's the pandemic, everyone's freaking out. But something I realized was when you go down this path of having side hustles or even a business or whatnot, you're a problem solver, right? So when the world is falling apart, you see that as not necessarily a terrible thing. You see that as an opportunity to help people. And so I remember how we pivoted during the pandemic, and we're like, okay, cool. Like there's different fears now. How can we alleviate those for our clients? And that's actually when we blew up. That's when we, had our first multi-six-figure year. And then from there, it's just compounded over and over and over, just because we were like, we're problem solvers. How can we solve problems with this vehicle that we have? And the rest is history. So yeah.
1,000%, man. Like entrepreneurs are just natural problem solvers, right? The brain's always working. You're always thinking, how can I better this? How can I do that? How can I fix that? Right. And I think one of the things, like, so I've served on the admissions committee, right, for my university. And, you're right. There shouldn't be people that discourage people from chasing after their dreams, right? That's kind of the first step, right? You can't listen to those things. You just got to find ways, right? Because where there's a will, there's a way, right? And I mean, unless you're just absolutely bottom of the barrel, like terrible grades, failed a lot of stuff, there's still a chance, right? And even if not, every process you go through and every interview you go through, you can get feedback and ask for feedback. How can I improve this? Is this a possibility? What do I have to do to make it a possibility, right? So if you really want it, you can get after it and get it, right? Now, once you get to that point and it's like, all right, now I'm in PT school and I'm going to be taking on all this debt. All right, well, that to me seems like a somewhat calculated risk if you can keep it, at a relative 1-to-1 ratio on the debt to income ratio. But if not, then you have to find a way to meet that demand, right? The difference in what you're actually making and what you're going to owe, and live comfortably, right? So I think, to me, most of the time the answer is start your own business. It just is. I tell people that all the time. And even if you don't go into starting your own business, you have to at least know how business works, especially in the healthcare field, if you're going to figure this out and navigate it properly, right? So once you get to that point where you're like, all right, I'm going to start a business, or, I'm going to figure it out and learn how much I have to work, again, it starts becoming important to have that time back, right? So trading time for money and working PRN hours just doesn't sit right with me. It's like, I got to learn a new EMR. I'm the only one there on the weekends. I'm doing eval after eval. It's just, and I love PT. I love treating patients, right? Or I love teaching and I love educating. I love what I do. But there's that time for money issue that I don't always want to be there for, right? I want to be able to leverage things that I already know, like physical therapy, like movement of the body, ergonomics and proper lifting, proper health, sleep, diet, nutrition, hydration, education, course curriculum development, like all the things, time management, prioritization, all the things we learn through graduate school. Those are skills that can be put toward helping people in ways where you don't have to be there one-on-one, And so I think that becomes super important. So like, what tips or tricks or pointers would you give to people that are looking to maybe get into PT school and haven't maybe done that yet, or if they're kind of trying to figure out if it's worth it or not? And then once in, like, how do you make it worth it no matter what?
That's a really good question. I would first of all say that if you're going to become a physical therapist, just understand that this conversation is something you're going to have to encounter. It's not a might. And I think the biggest mistake that I see students making is assuming that they'll just figure it out later, that it'll somehow get fixed later, that the government will solve it later, that schools might get cheaper at some point, that and that's the one thing. The biggest tip I could tell you is just don't ignore it, because ignoring it is the thing that will create the most frustration. Because as bad as this is going to sound, like, no one's coming to save you, right? And the earlier you can figure that out, the more empowered you can be, right? It's not a bad thing. It's just, it empowers you. You're grown up, you're an adult, right? And so, and I feel like a lot of us have this, like, it's an interesting transition where we've gone from being under our parents' support and whatnot, and we almost treat our careers the same way. But instead of our parents, it's the government. Instead of our parents, it's the school. Instead of our parents, it's our employer. And it might sound harsh, but it's the truth, right? And so, like, you are your own person, and once you can understand that, then you're like, oh, if I want to be a physical therapist, I can't ignore this. And so if you're going to be a PT and you decide to ignore it, you might not actually end up being the type of PT that you actually want, which means that it'll actually feel like a bad career choice, when in reality, PT is phenomenal. Like, there's listen, like, PT, all the things that you dream about physical therapy, the way you treat patients, the way it feels after someone gets back to a certain activity, yeah, like, it's a great thing, right? But don't underestimate the fact that when you're in a lot of debt, you start making decisions out of the desperation for paying that off, which means that you do things that you no longer love. Like even within PT, there's so many different branches. Like, I personally am not a big pediatric, like, I love kids, I just can't watch kids in pain. So pediatrics is just not the branch for me. But I have close friends that don't want to treat adults. They love working with kids, and that's what gives them life, right? So what if I have to sacrifice the area that actually gives me life and the area that I love pouring other people through? And then all of a sudden I'm making decisions where for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, I'm in a setting that I actually do not feel fulfilled by. I'll start feeling like I'll feel like it was a mistake. This is where some PTs actually tell students, if I could go back in time, I would have never been a PT. Is that really true? Like, clearly when you were in school, you felt like it was a good decision. Clearly when you graduated, you were excited. Something else changed, and it's typically connected to this. So the biggest tip is don't ignore it, and start asking yourself, what are things I can do now as a student to start figuring out how to generate more money, how to start my side hustle, how to use existing skills that I have right now to actually generate income? Because all money is just, it's a tool used in exchange for value. If you can help someone solve a problem, which you can, like, I think a lot of students feel like, oh, I gotta wait till I'm a PT before I can actually help somebody. What? No, that's not true, right? And so if I can actually help people, then people will happily exchange money with me. And I'm not saying that just because it's in my head. I'm saying that because I see it happen right now with students that are sometimes even getting paid more than a clinician because they figured out how to do it at a high level. So don't ignore it. That's the biggest tip I can give you.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great tip because I did that. I chased money over my first 10 years of my career. Again, when I was coming up, it was a master's program. The internet was just kind of starting, it wasn't a big thing. Now we live in a great time where the opportunities are endless for business and opportunity to make money for even students, right? And I wish I had known a lot of this stuff back then when I was a student. My life and trajectory would have been totally different. But given what it is, I still have taken the responsibility to say, hey, I took these loans out. I'm facing it head on. I'm not going to wait for the government to save me. I'm figuring out my own plan. I'm not going to let the government help my retirement. I'm not going to count on them for that. I doubt Social Security will even be around when I'm ready for it. So I'm forging my own path. I'm taking full responsibility, right? Extreme ownership, and just coming up with my own plan to make sure me and mine are taken care of. And along the way, I get to help people too, which is a win-win. Right. So I love that because you can't bury your head in the sand like an ostrich and just hope it goes away, because it's not going to happen. And student loans are sticky. They're one of those loans that you can't get rid of. They don't go away till you die. Right. So, I mean, it's something that we're going to have to face. And actually, now it looks like October, they're starting back up again. So, hopefully you have a plan, and if not, I would strongly recommend talking to some people to come up with one. Because it's definitely where we need to be moving forward as PTs to get paid what we're worth. Because again, there's opportunities out there where you can make 5, 10, 15 times what a PT would make treating a patient if you just leverage all the stuff that we know already, as PTs, and that's, I think, the big thing, and the thing I love most about you guys is that you're at least bringing awareness to that, right? And that's what I love. I love to just at least show my students, hey, these are possibilities. You don't have to do any of them, but they're all out there should you want them. If you're not happy, guess what? There's other opportunities. Find what drives you, find, your North Star, and go for it. Well, Joses, where can people find you? Where can they reach out if they have follow-up questions or they just want to know about the businesses and what you're up to these days?
Great question. So for pre-PT grind, so this is for someone that's trying to become a physical therapist, pre-PT grind on any platform. And then for anyone that's interested in the other side, which is how do I graduate debt free, Cash and Class University. So especially on Instagram, if you just type in Cash and Class University, that's where you'll find us. Just directly reach out to us. Chances are our team will reach out to you first. And then, of course, if you want to talk to us directly, just ask for us and they'll find me or Casey. But that's it. And thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing. And I hope y'all listen to all these messages that y'all are learning on on this series, because this is it. But you can have an amazing career. You just have to not ignore a lot of the things that most of us do.
Love it, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. We'll drop all those links in the show notes so that it's easy for people to find you. Joses, man, thank you again for everything. I appreciate your time. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Keep crushing it. And hopefully we get to link up sometime very, very soon again. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Hello, fellow Pops. I hope you are on your journey to becoming your own professor of profit. And I wanted to thank you for listening to the show and supporting all that PT Educator has to offer. It would mean the world to me if you would leave a rating, a review, drop a like or a comment, or share this episode out to someone who you think needs to hear it. It all helps support the show and the mission to help people learn more about business and learning and life in general. If you're about to start your business, I recommend checking out pteducator.com to see all that we have to offer. And remember, if you're going to be a lifelong learner, you might as well learn how to provide, prosper, and profit.